I was 62 years old, lying in a hospital bed with tubes in both arms, and my phone had exactly 43 unread messages. None of them from my children. Let me back up. Last October I collapsed at work. I'm a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. Have been for 22 years. It was a Tuesday morning, nothing unusual about it. I was at my desk going over quarterly reports when something hit me in the chest like a fist. I remember grabbing the edge of my desk. I remember my coworker Tina yelling my name. After that, nothing until I woke up in the ICU psychologist I'd never met standing over me, telling me I'd had a major cardiac event, and that I was lucky Tina had called 911 when she did. A widowmaker heart attack. That's what they called it. The kind that kills most people before they ever reach a hospital. I was alive by maybe 3 minutes. The doctors told me I'd need surgery, a triple bypass, and that my recovery was going to be long. Not days, weeks, possibly longer depending on complications. They asked me who my emergency contact was. I said my daughter Lena. They called her. She didn't come that day. I told myself she was probably in the middle of something. Lena lives about 40 minutes from Columbus, in Westerville. She has 2 kids, a husband named Brett, and a schedule she guards like it's classified information. I told myself she'd come tomorrow. I had the surgeries the following morning. I woke up in the recovery unit and my room was empty. She didn't come that day either. My son Owen lives in Denver. I understood that. He couldn't just drop everything and fly out for every medical situation. I get it, I really do. But I called him the evening after surgery, still groggy, barely able to hold the phone, and his voicemail picked up. I left a message. I said, I had heart surgery today. I just wanted to hear your voice. He texted back 2 hours later. He said, glad you're okay, Mom. Keep us posted. Keep us posted. Like I was a news outlet. The first week was the hardest physically. I couldn't lift myself without help. My blood pressure kept spiking. They were monitoring me around the clock, adjusting medications, running tests every few hours. The nights were the worst. That particular silence at 3 a.m. in a cardiac ward, where you can hear monitors beeping from other rooms and you lie there wondering if yours is going to start beeping the same way. I had no one with me. Not once during that first week. Tina could shave for. She brought flowers and a card signed by everyone at the office, and she sat with me for 2 hours, and we didn't even talk about anything important. She just sat there, and that was everything to me. My neighbor Ruth came on day 6 with a container of homemade soup the nurses had to tell her I couldn't eat yet. And she laughed about it and held my hand for a while. These 2 women, neither of them family, were the only human beings who came to see me in the first 7 days. Lena called on day 5. It was a Tuesday, exactly a week after I collapsed. She asked how I was feeling and I told her I was still in the ICU step-down unit and that the recovery was harder than I'd expected, and that it would mean a lot if she could visit. There was a pause. Then she said Brett had taken on extra shifts at work and the kids had activities and it was just really tough timing right now.
Really tough timing.
I lay there after we hung up and I stared at the ceiling tiles. I had memorized every Watser stain on those tiles by then, and I thought, she's 40 minutes away. Day 8, Owen called. We talked for about 12 minutes. He asked if I had good doctors. I said. He asked if the hospital food was terrible. I said yes. He said he'd try to make it out when things settled down a little. I didn't ask what things, I just said okay. The days started to blur after that. I'd wake up, get my vitals taken, eat whatever they brought me, do my walking exercises down the hall holding the IV pole, watch television I wasn't really watching, and wait. I kept my phone close. Every time it lit up I looked at it Usually it was notifications from apps I'd forgotten I had, or spam, or a text from my neighbor checking in. I won't tell you I was stoic about it. I wasn't. I cried more in those weeks than I had in years. Not the dramatic kind of crying. Just the slow, exhausted kind. When you're so tired and so alone and the body you've lived in for 62 years has just betrayed you completely. And the people you raised from infants can't find 40 minutes to sit with you. There was a woman in the room next to mine. I could hear her family through the wall. There were always people with her. Her daughter brought her grandchildren once and I could hear them arguing about something small and stupid, the way families do, and I pressed my face into my pillow and cried like I haven't cried since my husband Ray passed 9 years ago. I was in that hospital for 38 days. 38 days. I know that number exactly because I marked every single one on the small calendar the hospital gave me with the monthly activity schedule. Every morning I crossed off another day. It became the most important ritual I had. Lena came once, day 21. She stayed for an hour and 40 minutes. I know because I watched the clock, and for most of it she was on her phone. Before she left, she said the drive was exhausting and she didn't know how she was going to manage another visit. I thanked her for coming. I actually thanked her, like she'd done me a favor. Owen never came at all. Denver is a 2.5-hour flight. I know because I looked it up one night when I couldn't sleep. Round trips were running about $280 on the dates I checked. I noted that too. There were complications in week 4. An infection at the incision site that required additional treatment and pushed back my gestate by nearly 2 weeks. I called Lena when they told me. She said, "Oh no, really? That long?" And I heard, in the background, her television. I heard her laughing at something on it, just before she answered the phone. I heard her shift back into concerned daughter mode the moment she said hello. It's the kind of thing you can hear when you've known someone their whole life. I didn't say anything about it. I just told her the new timeline, and we said goodbye. My discharge day finally came on a cold Thursday in November. One of the nurses, a young woman named Camille who had been especially kind to me, helped me get my things together and walked me to the lobby. I had called a car service. When I got home, my house was exactly as I'd left it 6 weeks earlier, except colder because I'd had the thermostat set low. I sat down on my couch in my coat and just breathed for a while. I was home. I had survived. I was alone, but I was home. I didn't hear from either of my children that day. The weeks after a cardiac event are not easy, and I don't mean that lightly. There's a strict regimen, medications, diet, cardiac rehab appointments 3 times a week, follow-ups with the cardiologist, no lifting, no driving for the first several weeks. I was managing all of it alone. Ruth drove me to my first 4 rehab sessions. Before I was cleared to drive myself, my coworker Tina brought me groceries twice. These are the people who showed up. I was about 6 weeks out from discharge, so about 11 or 12 weeks after my heart attack, when Lena called on a Saturday morning. I had just come back from cardiac rehab and I was tired, the good kind of tired that means your body is slowly getting stronger, and I was making tea when my phone rang. She sounded bright, upbeat in a way that immediately put me on guard because I know my daughter, and that particular brightness usually means she wants something. She said she had exciting news. She said Owen's girlfriend, a woman named Priscilla, had finally gotten a ring and there was going to be an engagement party, and everyone was so thrilled, and she was calling because she and Owen had been talking, and they both felt it would be really meaningful to have a family contribution toward the venue. I let her finish. The venue they had in mind was a private event space in Denver. The rental cost for the evening was $4,400, plus catering, which they estimated at around $6,000, plus decorations, photographer, and a few other things. The total they were hoping family could cover was $14,000. Lena said she and Brett could do $3,000. She was asking me for $11,000. I sat down at my kitchen table. I had just spent 6 weeks in the hospital. I had not driven myself to a single appointment for the first month of my recovery. I was 62 years old, 3 months out from a triple bypass, still going to cardiac rehab, still adjusting medications, still dealing with the very real possibility that I might not be around in 5 years to see what any of this becomes. And I was being asked for $11,000 for an engagement party. I said, "Lena, I need a few days to think about this." She said, "Of course, take your time," and she said it so warmly that I almost believed she meant it. I did think about it. I thought about it a lot over the next few days. I thought about the 38 days on that calendar. I thought about Tina's flowers on day 4 and Ruth's soup on day 6. I thought about the hour and 40 minutes on day 21, and the sound of Lena's television in the background when I called about the infection. I thought about keep us posted and when things settle down a little and really tough timing right now. I thought about the fact that in 38 days, not one of my children found a way to sit with me. Not once overnight, not once through a hard day, not a single meal together, not a single handheld, nothing. And I thought about what $11,000 means to me right now. I'm 62. I'm working reduced hours while I recover. I don't know yet what my medical bills are going to total once everything is processed, Cardiac care is not cheap, and I have a decent insurance plan, but there are still out-of-pocket costs that are going to sting. $11,000 is not nothing. It's a significant piece of my savings. Savings I am going to need if I can't return to full-time work as planned. I called Lena back 4 days after her initial call. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "I've thought about it a lot, and I've decided I'm going to contribute to Owen's engagement. I want to support him." She said wonderful, she was so happy, she knew I'd come through. I said, "I'll be sending $250. Silence, I said. "I think that's a fair contribution given everything." She said, "Mom, just that, my name, the way she says it when she thinks I'm being unreasonable." I said, "I was in the hospital for 38 days, Lena." She said she knew that, she felt terrible about that. It was a really hard time for everyone. I stopped her there. I said, "You came once. Owen never came at all. I had my neighbor driving me to cardiac rehab, because neither of my children offered to help. So yes, I'm going to contribute to Owen's engagement party, $250. I'll send it to Owen directly." She went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I can't believe you're making this about that right now." I said, "I love you, Lena, I'm going to go now." And I hung up. I want to tell you that I felt triumphant. I want to say it was one of those clean, satisfying moments you see in movies where the wronged persons finally speaks their truth and the music swells and everyone feels the rightness of it. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like something tearing. Not painful exactly, but final. The way it feels when you finally admit something to yourself you've known for a long time. Owen called me that evening. He was not warm about it. He said Lena had told him about the conversation and he wanted to understand where I was coming from, which is his way of saying. He wanted to explain to me why I was wrong. He said he understood I'd had a hard time, but that Priscilla was going to be family now and it didn't feel right for me to punish the whole situation because of what happened with the hospital. I asked him one question. I said, "Owen, how many days was I in the hospital?" He said, "I don't know, a few weeks?" 38 days. He didn't know. His mother was in the hospital for 38 days and he couldn't tell me within 20 days how long it had been. I said, "I love you. I'll be sending the money to you directly," and I ended the call. I sent Owen a check for $250 the next morning with a card that said, "Congratulations on your engagement. Wishing you and Priscilla every happiness." I signed it with my name. Not Mom. My name. Lena texted me 3 times over the following week. The first said she hoped I'd reconsider. The second said I was creating a rift in the family over money. The third one came at 11:30 at night and was long. Several paragraphs about how I'd always been difficult. How she felt like she could never do enough. How the hospital situation was complicated, and she was dealing with her own stress, and I never asked about that. I read all 3. I didn't respond to any of them. Owen texted once to say he'd received the check and to say he was disappointed in me. That was the entire text. He'd received it. I want to be clear about something because I think people sometimes misunderstand this kind of stories. I didn't send $250 because I was trying to be petty. I didn't do it to cause a scene or make a point, or embarrass anyone. I did it because $250 is what I could honestly and wholeheartedly give to people who left me alone for 38 days in a cardiac ward. No more, no less. It was an honest number. It was what the relationship had shown me it was worth in the moments that actually count. I know some people will say I should have said nothing, just declined entirely. Others will say I should have given the full amount to keep the peace. But here's the thing about keeping the peace. I kept it for 62 years. I kept it through a marriage that wasn't always easy, and a widowhood I navigated alone, and 22 years of a job I stayed at, because it was stable, and children I sacrificed and compromised and showed up for over and over and over. The peace was kept, and I was still alone for 38 days. The cardiac rehab nurses know my name now. There's one, a man named Albert, who does my sessions on Monday and Wednesday. And he's been tracking my progress since day one, and he always says I'm ahead of where most patients are at this stage. Last week he said, "You're tougher than you think you are." I wrote that down when I got home. Ruth came over for dinner last Friday. We made soup together. The kind I actually can eat now. And we watched a movie and she fell asleep on my couch before it ended and I covered her with a blanket and thought, this is what it looks like. This is what showing up actually looks like. I haven't spoken to Lena or Owen in 6 weeks now. I don't know if they'll reach out again, or when, or whether I'll answer if they do. I've thought about that a lot. The daughter in me, the mother in me, wants to smooth it over, find a way back to how it was. But I keep coming back to something one of the chaplains at the hospital said to me during my 3rd week there, when I was having a particularly hard night. She said, "Sometimes the hardest thing isn't getting through the crisis. It's deciding what you're willing to carry on the other side of it." I thought about that for a long time. I decided I'm not carrying this the way I carried it before. I'm not pretending it didn't happen. I'm not folding it up and putting it away so that family dinners feel easier. I went through something that should have mattered to the people who are supposed to matter most to me, and it didn't. That truth gets to exist. I'm not going to paper over it with $11,000 and a smile. I am 62 years old. I had a widowmaker heart attack and survived it by 3 minutes because my coworker Tina had the sense to call 911. I spent 38 days in the hospital. I came home alone on a cold Thursday in November and sat on my couch in my coat. I went to cardiac rehab and learned to trust my heart again. I sent a check for $250 and I meant every cent of it. I don't know what comes next with my kids. I genuinely don't. I hope we find our way back to something real. Not the performance of closeness we had before, but something with honesty in it. Something where I'm not invisible until I'm useful. But if they can't get there, then I'll know that too. And I'll be okay either way. I know that now because I already survived the 38 days. Everything after that is just living.